dirty, dangerous, and difficult. That sums up the industries that often employ migrant workers. Malaysia is the largest importer of labor in Asia. They fill up the low-paying jobs that locals don't want to do.
Of course there is danger. We work with sharp objects and with fire. You must concentrate on the job. That's how the work is. If you don't concentrate, accidents will happen.
It's estimated there are more than 3 million such workers in the country, including those who are illegal. Without enough protection by local laws, it's common for them to suffer abuse, injuries, and even death at work.
If we look at some of the figures that we have for last year, more and more migrant workers are becoming physically disabled through accidents.
I'm Chan Tao Cho. This week on 101 East, we meet those who risk it all to work in Malaysia and ask, is enough being done to keep them safe?
यो पनि पोर्टकेलाङको साथी पोर्टकेलाङमा मेसिनमा काम गर्दा गर्दै पूर्णबहादुर सिलवाल त्यो काम गर्ने क्रममा चाहिँ मेसिनले नाइट ड्युटी गरेको एउटाको चाहिँ हात भाँचिएको छ एउटा चाहिँ यो खुट्टो भाँचेर पछि यो चाहिँ लाग्यो हैन कहिले पनि उसको चाहिँ दुख्छ मैले इन्स्योरेन्स पाइन भन्दै छ के अहिले यो साथीको पनि पोर्टकेलाङमा पानी जहाजमा काम गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ पानी जहाजबाट लडेर चाहिँ खुट्टा भाँचिएको अनि पछि उपचारहरू गरेर यो त्यही भयो दुईटा अमला छैन हैन यो दुईटा चाहिँ काम लाग्दैन काम गर्दा चाहिँ उसको अझै अचानक मेसिनले हात काट्यो
Bet Kumar Katiwada is a Nepali trade unionist based in Malaysia who helps migrant workers from his country. He says he takes at least 50 distress calls a day, asking for help to deal with insurance compensation, harsh working conditions, and unpaid wages.
हजुर नमस्कार नमस्कार को बोल्नु भएको सर को बोल्नु भएको विष्णु देमान के भएको सर त्यो जाने सिग्नेचर नगर्नु न सिग्नेचर नगर्नुस् है सिग्नेचर चाहिँ नगर्नुस् घर जानको लागि
The calls come from workers across the country.
सर नमस्कार आराम हुन्छ
आराम हुन्छ
In the southern state of Malacca, he meets Kadananda Koengkel, a Nepali who works in a food production company.
यस्तो म खाना खाइरहेको थिएँ खाएर उठ्नु
I was eating when the forklift suddenly swerved and came at me. It smashed my legs. There was no blood, but my ankles were broken. Only my skin held them together. The doctor is joining them back, but he says even the veins have ripped.
The accident 2 months ago left him with both legs fractured and unable to work. The company stopped paying his wages. Kadananda relies on friends to share their food with him.
काम हुँदाखेरि अब राति 11 बजेसम्म
I worked from 8 in the morning till 11 at night sometimes, with 6 hours overtime. I get $250 or $300. When my legs have healed, I can work again, and I will pay back the money I owe in Nepal.
Kadananda's legs are a long way from healing, but he still owes debtors $1,000 he borrowed to pay a recruitment agent. Such fees can cost up to 5 times more and take workers years to pay off.
When a person comes here to work, they take out a big loan. When they fail to pay it off, they lose their land, their house, everything. This happens a lot. We come here to earn money, but we die here. People lose their fingers, lose their hands, injure their eyes. Some migrant workers go crazy. There are many cases. Some become paralyzed. Some go for operations that fail and they die.
Migrant workers make up nearly a quarter of Malaysia's workforce. Rain or shine, they do menial work in construction sites, factories and plantations for a meagre basic pay, clocking many extra hours just to make ends meet. The lack of rest and proper training can come at a price. At the office of the Malaysian Trades Union Congress, or MTUC, a Nepali seeks help getting compensation for a horrendous workplace injury. He doesn't want to reveal who he is, as he's not supposed to be here. Foreign labourers are not allowed to join trade unions, but the MTUC is willing to step in.
If they are not allowed to join unions, they're not allowed to form association or so, whatever, then these people will be more vulnerable. Nobody is taking care of them.
While the law makes it compulsory for employers to take up an insurance scheme for migrant workers, compensation can be a long, slow process. With the union's intervention, this man received $2,300 months after losing his fingers. But he's among the lucky ones.
How many accidents happens, death, unreported death, And we had been complaining this to the ministry several times. In fact, we have brought them here, some losing their hands, even their arm. You see, but these people are not compensated.
But Malaysia's Human Resources Minister says compensation delays are rare.
Sometimes, of course, what happens in the case of death, the problem is in identifying who is the next of kin. The next of kin is in another country. Identifying who is the one legitimate and coming in, that might be the issue. But in terms of accidents, compensation is very fast.
The death of a worker is 20,000 ringgit, which is about $6,500. Do you think that's sufficient to present yourself as a country that's responsible to care for migrant workers?
That is a debatable issue, of course. What is sufficient, what is not sufficient? Who is going to define it? Okay.
But what do you think?
I mean, if the people feel that has to be increased, then they have to raise it through the proper channels for it to be discussed, so that for that to be relooked at again. But at the present time, that is the figure and that is the compensation.
In a migrant workers' dormitory in Johor, southern Malaysia, Dipendra Oli's best friend, Arjun, died in his sleep a few weeks ago. The man came from the same village in Nepal to work in a factory that produces plastic parts. Arjun was only 30 years old. They shared this bunk bed.
यस्तो 12 बजेसम्म त यस्तो उतामा परेर सुतेको थियो यस्तो गरेर यस्तो पैसा लगाएर यस्तो सुनिरहेको थियो अनि बिहान हेर्दा यस्तो कोल्टो परेको थियो उतातिर यसरी फर्केको थियो यस्तो यस्तै सुतेको थियो सर खुट्टा पनि जोडेको थियो हातमा यस्तो जोडेको थियो यस्तो हात जोडेर सुतेको थियो सबै साथीहरूलाई बोलाइम पछि धेरैजसोले हल्ला आउँदा पछि चाल नगर्दासम्म यस्तो भएछ भन्ने कुरा पछि थाहा भयो उसको सामान एउटा मोबाइल छ यसो यो मोबाइल हो अनि त्यसपछि उसको पर्स छ पर्समा 5 ringgit मात्रै थियो अरु कागज पत्र छ उसको डायरीहरु छ फोटा पनि छ सर यसको फोटा यस्तो छ हजुर एउटा राखेको छ 1040 बुझाएको छ सर जुलाई महिनाको रहेछ
You did a lot of OT to get that money?
Every day OT, Sunday.
So no rest days for the whole month? Arjun's friends say he had no apparent health problems. His death remains a shock to the workers and his family. Arjun's wife still calls his mobile phone.
उसले भन्छ आफ्नो मोबाइलमा फोन आन्छ फोन लागेपछि मेरो बुढा चाहिँ बित्या छैन फोन जान्छ त्यही गाली गर्छ न त भन्छ त्यस्तै
A post-mortem reveals Arjun died from a heart attack. It's a common conclusion for these so-called sudden deaths. Out of more than 200 Nepali workers who died in Malaysia last year, 1 in 5 suffered a fatal cardiac arrest, says the embassy here. But little is done to investigate the cause. Over a phone call, the factory's human resources manager says they've referred the case to their insurance company.
赔偿多少呢？
看咯，这个是保险公司自己的估计，信件一定要从他们自己的家属那边出了，我们才可以把遗体遣送回去啊。现在是等他们的信件到大使馆了。
Experts find it hard to pin down the cause of such deaths.
Why did they die? Young guys, physically very active, working very hard, generally stressed, Malnourished on the other side, going to bed, getting up dead. Cause of death found to be ventricular fibrillation. We have ASEAN declaration.
Dr. Krishna Gopal Rampal is an expert on occupational safety and health.
Because the heart is beating very, very fast, the ventricles in the heart, which basically pump blood out to the organs in the body, right, are not able to work effectively. The individual dies suddenly. We know that most of these migrant workers who are here are working under conditions which are stressful. They also are working long hours. They have left their families at home. Some of them depressed, even like nutrition. They will also try to save on the food that they're eating so that they're able to send the money home. All of that contributes.
Irene Fernandez of non-governmental organization Tenaganita says more than 1,000 foreign workers died here last year. Only a fraction received payment from the government's Workmen's Compensation Act.
If we put the statistics together, we are talking about at least 4 to 5 deaths a day. Now, this for me is tremendous because there's very little discussion on it.
The government disputes the figure. It recorded fewer than 500 migrant worker deaths this year.
You are telling about 1,200 fellows die a year. I mean, how can...
These are the figures from high commissions and embassies of the source countries.
Which is not true, not true. It's absolutely not true. There's no base. You see, I think our Labour Department is informed on all deaths of foreign workers. We keep tab of that. The rate of industrial accidents in Malaysia is one of the lowest in this region. Ours is about 5.2 per 1,000 workers.
Critics say accidents in construction sites make up a big part of the statistics, as safety is poorly enforced.
Unfortunately, what we often see is workers falling from a great height, slipping over very often. Also, we've seen workers working with power tools, and when they're on an unsecured platform, there's absolutely no harness or no safety barriers to protect them from a fall in case there's wind, in case there's some form of slip from working with the materials. You can also see they're not wearing helmets, which is a basic safety requirement on these construction sites.
So this is obviously a dangerous job. Why do you think there's such a slack attitude towards general safety?
Migrant workers are often paid less, so there's an attitude from employers and contractors that these people can simply come in and do the job quickly. There's also the attitude of, like I said just then, these people. They're different, they're not us, and so maybe the same rules and regulations don't apply as much. I think migrant workers, their voice isn't as loud as Malaysian workers often, and so that means that they're unseen.
Thousands of migrant workers live in this community in Kapar, an industrial town tucked away on the west coast of peninsular Malaysia. On Sundays, the area comes alive, with migrant workers setting up shop to cater to each other's daily needs. Muhammad Harun al-Rashid is a familiar face here. He has helped many of them with injury compensations. The workers live in basic conditions. There are 22 sharing this dormitory.
উপরের বেটা আছে নিচে বেটা আছে আমরা সব নিচে থাকি উপরে থাকা লাগে না একজন থাকা লাগে আমাদের
300 টাকা বেসিক করব কিন্তু ওখানে করে কি না কইতে দিই না আমরা 550 টাকা বেসিক পাইতেছি তো আমাদের আর ওখানে যে কাজ কম বাইতে টাকা পাইতে না পাড়া ভাই কইতেছে
ওকে আপনার এটা কি ঘটছে এটা বলেন তো স্টোরিটা কি হইছিল
একটা লোহার ইয়া থাকে পাত থাকে তো বুঝলাম এমন ধাক্কা দিত ওই ধাক্কা কি করছিলেন মেশিন অটো হয়ে আমার হাতের মধ্যে পড়ে গেছিল আর আমার কাছে কোনো লোক ছিল না আমি মনে করেন এখান থেকে ধরেন না মাথায় ওই মাথায় যাইতেছি ছিলে কারণ আমাদের লোকজন